My fork hovered halfway to my mouth, the sweet potato casserole trembling slightly as my father's voice cut across the Thanksgiving table like a knife. "You're nothing but a leech. It's time you left this house." The room seemed to shrink around me. The chandelier's glow no longer warmed the mahogany table, but instead spotlighted my humiliation. For a moment, even the air stilled. The only sound that remained was the rhythmic tick of the antique clock in the living room, the very one I'd paid to repair last spring when its hands froze at midnight. I looked up instinctively, searching for even the smallest sign of solidarity. My mother, Celia, sat across from me, but her eyes never rose. She pushed green beans into lines across her plate, sculpting order out of chaos, avoiding my gaze. My sister, Lila, 17, stared at her water glass as though she could disappear into it. The silence was unbearable, a silence that declared guilt long before I'd been allowed to speak. What stung wasn't just Martin's words, but the timing. Only 20 minutes earlier, I had shared news about my promotion at the architecture firm, a role I had worked toward for years. I imagined a toast, maybe even a smile of pride from him. Instead, here I was, condemned between spoonfuls of cranberry sauce and turkey. The irony rolled over me in waves. Every bill that kept this house running bore my name. The electric account, the water service, even the insurance that covered Celia's doctor appointments. My signature was the only thing preventing this household from collapsing like a house of cards. 3 months earlier, when Celia lost her job at the accounting office and Martin's hours at the hardware store barely stretched to cover the mortgage, I had stepped in. No hesitation. Groceries, utilities, repairs. One by one, responsibility shifted onto my shoulders. Each time, Martin's authority shrank a little more, his signature disappearing from the household ledger. I should have seen this coming. 2 weeks earlier, through the open kitchen window, I overheard him talking to our neighbour, Mr. Whitcomb. "It's not right," Martin had said, his voice heavy with bitterness. "A man losing control of his own household. She acts like she owns the place now." At the time, I thought he meant Celia. Tonight, I realised the target had always been me. When I didn't immediately respond, Martin's jaw tightened. His knuckles whitened around his fork. "Did you hear what I said?" His voice rose, the tremor of insecurity barely hidden beneath its bark. "You need to be out by the weekend." My hands trembled, not from fear, but from something deeper, something shifting inside me. I set down my fork carefully, folded my napkin, and met his eyes head-on. My pulse steadied as I said, clear and calm, "I understand perfectly." The words floated in the air, unexpected and unnerving. Martin blinked, caught off guard by my composure. For years, he had thrived on my silence, my willingness to absorb insults and carry burdens. Tonight, silence turned into something new. Resolve. Celia finally spoke, her voice thin and hurried, as if trying to sweep away the moment. "Rowan, you'll still pay the medical insurance this month, won't you? I have that appointment on Tuesday." And there it was, the truth I had known but never wanted to say aloud. I wasn't a daughter at this table. I was an account number, a signature on the bottom of checks. I rose quietly, gathering my plate and Lila's empty glass. "Of course, Mum," I said evenly, though my chest hollowed with every syllable. "I'll take care of it before I go." As I walked to the kitchen, my eyes swept the room one last time. The refrigerator I had bought when the old one failed. The streaming service I upgraded for Lila's schoolwork. The overhead lights I kept glowing with my paycheck. Evidence of my presence surrounded them, yet none of it mattered. To them, I wasn't family. I was a utility. In the silence behind me, I heard only the scrape of Lila's chair and the faint brush of her fingertips against my wrist as she placed her plate in the sink. It was the smallest gesture, almost nothing at all, but in that house, it was the closest thing to love I had felt in months. The red glow of the digital clock read 1:18 a.m. when I snapped shut the lid of my suitcase. My room looked less like a sanctuary and more like an evidence locker, clothes folded with mechanical precision, boxes stacked neatly, each one bearing the quiet weight of betrayal. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Martin's face at the table, his words echoing like a gavel striking down a verdict. I moved to my desk, intent on sorting the documents I needed to carry with me: insurance statements, grocery receipts, utility bills, all proof of what I had sacrificed. But as I lifted the stack, something strange caught my eye. A crisp envelope, thick, out of place. Then another, and another, a small pile of bank statements all bearing Martin Hale's name. My brow furrowed. We hadn't had paper statements since Celia lost her job. Everything had gone digital. I tore one open. My eyes widened as the numbers came into focus. $4,000 in July, $5,000 in August, almost $7,000 now. A savings account I had never heard of, swelling while my own drained dry. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. Alongside them lay a glossy brochure from a boat dealer, Martin's handwriting scrawled in the margins. Down payment $5,500. Scheduled delivery after Thanksgiving, underlined twice. A bitter laugh escaped me. While I stretched my budget to cover Celia's medical visits and Lila's school internet, Martin was saving for a fishing boat. My ramen dinners had financed his dream of cruising a lake. The door creaked softly. Lila slipped inside, her hair mussed from sleep, her eyes darting nervously toward the hallway. "You're really leaving?" she whispered, spotting the open suitcases. "I don't have a choice," I said, clutching the damning statements. She lingered by the door, fingers twisting the hem of her sweatshirt. "I overheard them weeks ago," she confessed, her voice trembling. "They were planning this. Dad said they'd wait until after you paid November's bills. Mom even joked they'd finally get to use your room for storage once the boat came." The words hit me harder than Martin's outburst had. "You knew?" I asked, my voice low, wounded. Lila's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to tell you, but Dad said if I warned you, I'd be next." I'm sorry." I swallowed the anger rising in my throat. She was just a kid, trapped like me, navigating Martin's grip in her own way. But she wasn't finished. "There's more," she whispered, glancing back at the hallway. "Those doctor appointments Mum's been having? The ones you've been paying through your insurance? Last week, she came home with her lips all swollen. She said the doctor told her not to use a straw. Rowan, it wasn't a checkup. It was fillers." The room spun. My stomach clenched. I'd been rationing cheap meals, cutting corners, staying late at work to keep money flowing, while my mother used my insurance for vanity injections. The betrayal sank its teeth deeper, cold and merciless. I pulled up my banking app on my phone. My savings balance blinked back at me. $782.43. Just 3 months ago, it had been over $9,000. Nearly everything I'd worked for siphoned away to prop up their lies. If I stayed one more month, I would have nothing. My decision crystallized in that moment. I grabbed a shoebox from under my bed, pulling out neatly catalogued receipts, dated, itemized, proof of every fridge, desk, laptop, and carpet I had purchased for this house. I snapped photos, uploaded them to cloud storage, and slid the originals into my bag. If Martin and Celia wanted to rewrite history, I would not let them erase the paper trail. Lila hovered beside me, her voice small. "Rowan, what would you do in my place? If you had to choose between standing up for what's right or keeping peace in the only home you have?" I stared at the boat brochure in my hand, their underlined words mocking me. My father dreamed of sailing free while shackling me to his debts. I folded it carefully and tucked it with the receipts. "I'd choose freedom," I said quietly, my voice steadier than I felt. 3 days after Thanksgiving, I sat hunched on Juno's pull-out couch, the thin blanket doing little to fight off the chill creeping into my bones. My suitcases were stacked against the wall, 4 cardboard boxes wedged beneath the window. 28 years of my life, reduced to what I could carry in a frantic 2 hours while my parents were at Sunday service. My phone buzzed again. Aunt Margot's voice crackled through the speaker, sharp as vinegar. "Honestly, Rowan, I never thought you'd abandon your parents when they needed you most." I bit down on the inside of my cheek. Martin had already spun his version of the story across the family grapevine, painting me as the selfish daughter who stormed out. "Did Dad mention he kicked me out?" I asked evenly. A pause. "He said you left them high and dry after a little disagreement." Her voice oozed judgment. "We're holding a family meeting this weekend to discuss your behaviour." Of course, a public tribunal, orchestrated by Martin, where he'd control the narrative. I hung up before she could say more. My hand shook, but not from fear, from rage. That night, I launched what I privately dubbed Operation Unlink. I cancelled auto payments to their utilities, logged into the cell phone account to remove my card, called the internet provider to detach my name from the contract. When the rep chuckled and said, "So, you're finally cutting the cord, huh?" I forced a laugh in return. He didn't know I wasn't cutting a cord. I was severing chains. Next came the financial safeguards. Fraud alerts on my credit file. New bank account at a credit union Martin didn't know existed. I even requested a hardware security key, locking down every password like my life depended on it, because it did. Financial abuse wasn't just manipulation, it was control, the kind that sank its claws deep and didn't let go until you bled. The knock on the apartment door came 2 nights later, loud enough to rattle the frame. Juno stiffened on the couch beside me. I already knew who it was before the booming voice confirmed it. "Rowan, open this door right now!" Martin's voice drunk on fury and desperation. Theo's dog, Moose, barked wildly, tail straight like a warning flag. I crept toward the door, my heart hammering. Through the peephole, Martin's face glowed red, sweat slicking his temples. He pounded again, each blow splintering the wood. "You think you can just abandon your family? Destroy our lives?" His spit hit the peephole glass. Mrs. Whitcomb's door creaked open across the hall. The elderly widow peered out, clutching her robe. "Young man," she called, her voice trembling but firm, "I've called building security. You need to stop this." Martin whirled on her. "Mind your own damn business, lady." Her reply cracked like a whip. "Your behaviour became my business the moment you threatened the peace here." The next kick shook the entire doorframe. I dialed 911 with shaking fingers, whispering details to the dispatcher. Seconds later, the elevator dinged. Heavy boots thudded down the hall. "Step away from the door!" The security guard's voice cut through the chaos. Martin spun, sputtering. "This is my daughter's place. I have every right." "You have no right to damage property or disturb residents. Police are on their way." Sirens wailed faintly in the distance, growing louder. I stayed rooted to the spot, watching through the peephole as 2 uniformed officers rounded the corner. Within minutes, Martin's wrists were cuffed behind his back. His face twisted as he shouted, "She's the one destroying this family!" But his words didn't matter anymore. For the first time, the system that had so often ignored me seemed to tilt in my favour. When Officer Ramirez turned to me for my statement, I opened my binder, receipts, account numbers, records of stolen money. My voice didn't shake as I explained. This time, my paper trail would speak louder than his lies. The following week, I stood on the cracked walkway of my parents' house, Officer Chen beside me. Her cruiser idled in the driveway, its presence a silent warning to anyone peering from the neighbouring windows. Curtains twitched. The Hale family scandal was quickly becoming neighbourhood theatre. Celia opened the door. her face painted with a smile that faltered the moment she saw the officer. "Oh, this isn't necessary," she said, voice dripping sugar. "Rowan's just here for a visit." Officer Chen's gaze was steady, unimpressed. "Mrs. Hale, I'm here to accompany Rowan while she collects her belongings. Nothing more." Inside, the house looked smaller, suffocating even, as if the walls themselves knew the truth was closing in. I moved swiftly, heading straight for my bedroom. My binder of receipts felt heavy under my arm. Not just paper, but armour. I pulled open drawers, slid clothes into bags, stacked my books into boxes. Celia hovered in the hallway, arms crossed. "That furniture belongs to the family, Rowan. You can't just strip the house bare." Wordlessly, I flipped open my binder, holding up receipts like playing cards. The desk, purchased July, my credit card. The refrigerator, August, delivery signed by me. Lila's laptop, September, school discount, in my name. Even the carpet under our living room table bore my transaction history. Officer Chen leafed through the papers, eyebrows rising. "You paid for all this?" "For the last 6 months," I confirmed, "since my mother lost her job." Celia's mouth opened, then snapped shut. She retreated down the hall without another word. I continued my work methodically, filling box after box. Through the front window, I could see neighbours standing in their yards, pretending to water plants or fetch mail. Let them watch. Let them see Martin's empire cracking. The slam of a car door jolted me. My stomach dropped as I turned to see my father stepping out of my old sedan, the spare car I'd left parked at Juno's, the one I'd foolishly given them a key for years ago, in case of emergencies. He twirled the keys around his finger, grinning like a victor returning from battle. "You think you can take everything, Rowan?" he sneered. "This car belongs to us. After all I paid for your college, your braces..." I set down the box in my arms, pulled out a folder, and held up the title and registration. Both bore only my name. "This car is mine," Martin's smirk faltered. Officer Chen stepped forward. "Sir, the vehicle is legally registered to Rowan. Hand over the keys." Martin's jaw worked furiously. "She owes us years of expenses." "The keys, Mr. Hale," Chen said firmly, her hand extended. Slowly, Martin's fingers uncurled, the jingle of surrender sounding louder than any of his rants. For the first time in my life, I watched the man who had loomed like a giant over our family look small, deflated, stripped of his bluster. I slid into the driver's seat, the title tucked safely into my bag. My hands didn't shake as I adjusted the mirror. "Come near me or my property again," I said, my voice calm, clear, final. "And I'll file for a restraining order." As the engine rumbled to life, I saw neighbours' eyes following me. Witnesses to the public unravelling of Martin Hale. On the porch, Lila stood in the doorway, caught between two worlds, her hand lifted, hesitant, a wavering wave of sorrow and admiration mixed. I drove away, the binder of receipts beside me like a shield, the road ahead stretching open in a way it never had before. 2 weeks later, Juno's apartment had become my war room. Paperwork sprawled across the kitchen table, bank statements, credit reports, insurance letters, each one a brick in the wall I was building between myself and the chaos I'd escaped. Theo shuffled past with Moose trotting behind him, the golden retriever dropping a tennis ball on my lap, as if to remind me to breathe. "Operation Firewall still underway?" Theo asked lightly. "Almost done," I muttered, typing a new password with the hardware key I'd bought after Martin tried 3 times to reset my online banking. Fraud alerts were now active on every account. My savings sat in a new credit union under only my name. The old accounts, the ones my parents knew, were emptied and locked down. "Smart," Juno said, sliding a mug of tea beside me. "Financial abuse doesn't stop when you walk out the door. They'll try to reach you any way they can." She was right. Already, I'd received 2 denial letters from the insurance company. Celia's doctor visits flagged as cosmetic procedures. The bills had been redirected to her, a quiet but devastating consequence of her deceit. For once, it wasn't me footing the cost of her vanity. That same week, Officer Ramirez called to confirm that my laptop and camera had been recovered from Parkway Pawn. Celia had gotten just $300 for equipment worth more than $2,000, and now her name was tied to a criminal report. I stared at the receipt the officer handed me, the pawnshop stamp glaring like proof that finally the lies were catching up to them. The smear campaign, however, didn't stop. My phone lit up daily with messages from cousins, aunts, and even old family friends. Your mum says you stole from them. Your dad says you're unstable. But cracks had started to form. Mrs. Whitcomb's testimony about Martin's late-night assault on Juno's apartment spread through the grapevine. Suddenly, relatives who once parroted Martin's stories began calling with softer tones, confusion edging into their voices. I didn't chase their sympathy. My focus was survival. I picked up weekend shifts at a bookstore to supplement my salary, every extra dollar feeding my fragile emergency fund. I built a zero-based budget in a spreadsheet, every line item accounted for. Rent, groceries, a line for therapy because I finally admitted I needed it. The numbers were tight, but they were mine. Some nights, exhaustion pressed against me like a heavy blanket. Then, Moose would drop another ball in my lap, nudging me until I laughed. Or Theo would suggest a walk by the river, or Juno would sit beside me, scrolling through apartment listings, nudging me toward ones with good light and safe neighborhoods. They never asked for repayment. They never asked for justification. Their support wasn't transactional. When the letter arrived about my theft report, I read it twice. Case substantiated. Property recovered. The words lifted something off my chest I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. The validation that what happened wasn't just family drama. It was theft. It was abuse. And the law recognized it as such. Late one evening, Lila's text pinged my phone. Mom and Dad lost power again. They say you ruined them. I don't know how much longer I can take it here. I stared at the screen, heart twisting. She was still trapped in that collapsing house, still paying the price for their bitterness. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing. When you're ready, I'll help you. College applications, scholarships, whatever it takes. You won't have to stay there forever. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to believe it. Maybe I wasn't just escaping. Maybe I was building a bridge for the one person still worth saving. 1 year later, the smell of rosemary and roasted garlic filled my apartment, a place small enough that the kitchen, dining and living room flowed together. The teal accent wall I'd painted gleamed in the evening light, a reminder that every choice here, every colour, every object, was mine alone. I slid a golden brown turkey onto the table. It wasn't as grand as the one I cooked the year Martin banished me, but it didn't need to be. The mismatched dishes and second-hand table carried more meaning than any chandelier-lit feast at the Hale house ever had. "Can I help with anything?" Lila asked, hovering near the counter. She looked different now, not taller, but freer, her shoulders no longer hunched, her gaze steady. "Your company's enough," I told her. The words came naturally, without the invisible tally of expenses that used to hang over every conversation in my parents' home. Theo poured cider into thrifted glasses, while Moose circled the table, tail wagging like a metronome. Juno raised her drink. To found family and boundaries worth keeping. We clinked glasses, laughter bubbling easily. For the first time, Thanksgiving felt like Thanksgiving. Later, after pie and laughter, Lila and I sat at the kitchen counter surrounded by stacks of scholarship forms. She leaned over one, pen tapping nervously. They lost the house last month, she murmured. Dad blames the bank, the economy, everyone but himself. They're staying with Uncle Rick, but he's already dropping hints. I nodded, my eyes drifting to a stack of unopened envelopes on my bookshelf. 5 letters from Celia and Martin, all marked with my parents' neat handwriting, all untouched. They still blame me? I asked softly. Lila sighed. For everything. But honestly, they were going to sink no matter what. Your money just delayed it. I highlighted a line on her application. Then, you're going to build something they can't touch. For a moment, the kitchen fell quiet, except for Moose's gentle snores. Lila studied me, her eyes glinting with something new. Admiration, maybe. You really did it, she said. You got free. I glanced around my apartment. The teal wall, the battered table, the neatly organised bills, all comfortably within my means. My emergency fund had grown to cover 2 months of expenses, well on its way to 6. I wasn't rich, but I was secure. Secure in ways money couldn't measure too. My phone buzzed on the counter. Another message from Celia. Rowan, can we talk? I didn't open it. Instead, I slipped it into the folder I'd labelled for therapy, a space where I stored what I couldn't yet process. Do you ever think you'll answer them? Lila asked. I thought of Martin's face when he surrendered my car keys, of Celia's silence when my receipts dismantled her lies. Then I thought of Juno's tea, Theo's patience, Moose's slobbery tennis ball, and the teal wall behind me. Maybe someday, I admitted, but not on their terms. Only mine. Outside, the city hummed softly. Distant and indifferent. Inside, laughter and clinking glasses rose again as Theo and Juno called us back to the table. Lila smiled, slipping her scholarship essay into a folder, her future unfolding. I joined them, sliding into my chair as Moose dropped another tennis ball at my feet. This time, the sound of its bounce felt less like a demand and more like an invitation. Love, I realised, was never meant to be measured by invoices, and neither was family.